Welcome back to Tas Brax, where we get down to the brass tacks of, well, whatever I want, but I reckon it will mostly pertain to movies. One movie that has bothered me tremendously for years is an installment from the DC of old. A movie that, for the first two acts, was actually incredibly solid, with great VFX, half-decent writing, great performance, and probably the best, or it's at least in the top 3 in the DCEU. We're getting down to the brass tacks of Black Adam, and how some rewrites could have truly made this movie great, and I don't know, maybe would have saved the DCEU like it had set out to do. Let's get into it. I want to first start by saying this movie really isn't as bad as its box office would infer. It actually is a pretty fun and entertaining movie, but it hurt itself trying to be an action vehicle for The Rock, who claims to love this character and then neuters him the moment he gets the plane. If they kept this movie on the track it was headed without The Rock's production team and stupid contractual obligations, this movie would have been a lot more interesting. The big issue is that everything that makes this movie interesting is never actually leaned into. So, as we go, I'll get more into that and explain further, but again, this movie was solid for like the first 80 minutes, and especially in the last 20 minutes, it truly falls apart. So, we start off in Kahndaq, which is also a really fun word to say, so I'll be saying it as often as I can in this video. So, we start off in Kahndaq, and the visuals are so back and forth. Anytime you have a practical set, it looks anywhere between alright to great. And I feel like most movies probably follow that trend, so I really shouldn't complain about it. But then there's all these CGI landscape shots that often don't really look convincing, but they don't exactly look bad. They look cartoonish. Actually, they look like something out of a comic book, which isn't by any means a bad thing. I actually like it. It makes it feel a little more fantastical. When compared to the practical shots though, for instance the mines, they start to look more like dog water. But it never really takes me out. It's almost a non-issue for me, so I probably shouldn't be bringing it up. But since I brought up the mines, what a way to start this movie, because it looks phenomenal. I thought that everything was desaturated and whoever did the color correction needed to go take a class in DaVinci Resolve again or something. Then you start to see the dark skin showing through the patches behind the pale clay. You see the armor of the guards glistening. You see the Eternium shine bright and vibrant. It just jumps right out at you. The reason I'm getting so in depth in this scene is because it actually is a great way to start the movie, but the movie really does look good in most instances. The set designs can sometimes be a bit boring and without character, but for as many sets without character, there are an equal amount dripping in it. That goes for almost everything in this movie. Black Adam, Hawkman, Dr. Fate, they all look phenomenal with phenomenal designs. But then you've got Sabbac, Atom Smasher, and while not technically lacking character, Cyclone's outfit. It was just kind of whatever. Not every character or set has to be bursting at the seams with incredulous details or character. So again, I shouldn't complain about it, but a lot of these folks are main characters. So I don't know. I'm going to explain later how this movie could have avoided some of those things that some dumb comic fan will go back and forth on praising or condemning in their movie, and it would have been easy. Other than just designs, a lot of the important CGI and VFX look absolutely stunning. Yeah, I mentioned how those CG landscapes don't look great, but do they really matter? Do those things actually propel the movie? You know what matters? When they're about to execute Teth Adam's son and he just disappears. That looked great. It was an important moment and it looked amazing. It honestly looked practical, and if you told me it was a blend of practical camera work and VFX, I'd believe you, because I'm pretty sure it was a mix of that. Also, what matters is that the CGI in Teth Adam's suit looks cool and dynamic and actually adds to it. Also, I'm pretty sure the light in his suit is also practical with CGI added later. Or maybe with the hassle from Shazam they didn't do it, I'm not sure. I know that they had an actual LED in the Shazam suit, however, I know it was also a problem. I probably should have looked into this before I put it in the essay, but I looked and I couldn't find a definitive answer. My bad. Anyways, almost every action sequence actually looked pretty fire. The VFX team did great, and the design team for the VFX were on point. My only two big complaints are that Sabak looked pretty lame. Yeah, he looked pretty lame, and his CGI is questionable at times. Also, this isn't really a VFX complaint, but his demon ghouls looked a little too cartoonish. And I know I literally just said that the landscape scenes looked cartoonish and they looked like straight out of a comic book. This is a solely subjective opinion. It's not actually a complaint against the movie. The other, and basically only real CGI issue that I have, is that sometimes Dr. Fate looks like he's out of a video game. Again, more often than not, he looks great, but there's a few moments where he looked out of place. The most important part to me is that when the CGI is front and center, more often than not, it looks impeccable. The movie does a great job of hiding its ugly when it needs to. They use the budget in the right places so that the symbol on his chest can look rad, or the staffs that the wizards are using all look sick, or whenever he gets shot, it actually leaves an indent. I love that little detail, by the way. Like, yeah, he's invincible, but his skin is like actually diamond hard. Of course his skin would look pressed on every time a bullet hit it. So yeah, it seems like they actually put a lot of effort into making this movie look good. If you watched my last video, you'll start to realize I really like talking about the non-plot elements of a movie first, so I can get the praises or criticisms in before I start trying to rewrite a movie. I don't believe I'll try to rewrite every movie, not all movies can be saved, but this will likely be my format for any future videos. Tell me what you think in the comments. Should I stick with it or maybe make some changes to the format? Let me know. With that in mind, I'd like to talk about the performances. For a movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he actually gave a lot more depth to this than I thought he was going to. It's funny because there's so many moments where it seems like he understands this character and how to utilize him, but then there's some pretty incredibly egregious moments where he totally neuters this character that he supposedly loves and has been campaigning to play for over 10 years. Anyways, to get back to his performance though, he actually for the most part plays it pretty well. Dwayne Johnson almost exclusively plays likable, down-to-earth, personable characters. He's always the good guy, he always comes out on top. Actually, I've heard that he often is contractually obligated to come out on top and purposely takes or makes rules as a likable good guy. Well, that's an issue, because Teth Adam isn't always likable, or always a good guy. In fact, Teth Adam is supposed to be a bad guy. He can be an anti-hero, sure, but this movie never really paints him as an anti-hero. What, just because he kills bad guys, he's not a hero? Tell that to literally all of the Avengers. I'll talk more about how they could have stayed true to Black Adam's character, but in regards to Johnson's performance, he actually does play it pretty cold and uncaring. A somewhat different departure from his normal roles. He actually does seem kind of like a jackass at times, and he should. He is not a hero. He's not a good guy, and they should have leaned into that. There's a moment after a big fight between the Justice Society where Black Adam is just staring at the statue of his son and he says, "They can talk. I won't listen." And goddamn, that delivery is actually so good and has so much depth. Just in 2 lines. 1 line technically. You could hear the pain and melancholy in his voice. The fact that he just misses his kid. Honestly, it's such a letdown that he could give a decent performance like this, but refuse to let the character be written right. To continue performances, Aldous Hodge, Pierce Brosnan, Mohammed Amer. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I'm gonna go ahead and say Amer. Let me know if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Anyways, they all did phenomenal. I loved Aldous Hodge's Hawkman. I feel like Hawkman is usually a more restrained character. He's not so off the cuff with his comments, especially towards Atom Smasher. He's not so funny, but I liked his performance. I thought it was great. Also, there's literally no better choice for Kent Nelson than Pierce Brosnan. What an absolutely perfect casting and perfect performance. Mohammed Amer, who played Uncle Khmer, he was honestly one of the best parts of the movie. Now, that isn't to say that other performances aren't as good. They definitely are, especially Noah Centineo. Al Rothstein was a fun and likable character, and Centineo's performance is what made those things fun and interesting. But him, as well as many others in the movie, they just weren't utilized well. Alright, let's jump into the plot and where it fails, and where we can make it better. The movie starts out well enough. A little too much narration, but I'm not going to send a movie for narration unless it's egregious, unlike some other YouTube movie reviewers. We get a little backstory on Kahndaq and about Eternium and the Evil King. It's fine, it's whatever. It's not special, but it's also not bad. Plenty of movies start with exposition like this. It's fine, we're getting past it. I really like the first half of this movie with almost no quarrels. I like how the beginning starts with some fun chase action from the mines. I also like how we see the champion get the powers, and I like how we see his rage destroying Kahndaq. Also, I knew that was Dwayne Johnson in the mine. Dude has a very particular head shape, and the moment I saw him, I knew that the kid wasn't Teth Adam. It was still a good reveal and a very heartfelt loss when we see it happen, and I wouldn't change a thing. I just want it to be known I saw that coming a mile away, and I feel like a lot of other people did as well. I know I praised it in one way or another already, but almost every action scene in this movie is fun and dynamic. Even when the young champion is running away from the guards, or when he's about to be beheaded and gets his powers, all the way to the later fight scenes with Teth Adam versus the Justice Society. They are all super fun, and it feels like they carry weight. Even though a lot of them are VFX and CGI, you really feel the power behind every single blow. So soon they introduce Intergang. Now, Intergang being just your nameless, quasi-government mercenaries is a pretty good choice in this. Not only does it parallel real-world issues of governments occupying foreign lands, but also they're great cannon fodder for the Man in Black. This kind of brings us back to the big issue though. Intergang is evil. They're bad people doing bad things and hurting whoever they can because they can. Black Adam isn't a villain or really even an anti-hero for disposing of these guys, and I stand by that. At least in the context of a superhero movie. The reason I bring this up is because it's very shortly after that, Teth Adam is released from his prison and absolutely annihilates an entire army of Intergang. I mean, they really push that PG-13 rating, which I'm not complaining about. I said it multiple times and I'll say it again. The action is stellar in most of this movie. It was an absolutely badass scene of him just turning folks into dust or goo. But they attack him first. They start shooting him, and they're the ones that endanger Adriana, which I'm all for, but again, I cannot stress this part enough. Teth Adam is not a villain for this. Even when the Justice Society shows up, they instigate the fight, and Teth Adam never does anything all that villainous. Speaking of the Justice Society, we meet Hawkman, Doc Fate, Atom Smasher, and Cyclone. Hawkman and Doc Fate are awesome inclusions and have a lot to do in this movie. Atom Smasher and Cyclone, on the other hand, feel unnecessary and ham-fisted. They don't really serve much of a purpose except to help battle Black Adam. So here comes our first and second rewrite. First, let's get rid of Atom Smasher and Cyclone, alright? And replace them with Red Tornado. I like Red Tornado. He's an interesting character, and the dynamic and jokes between a 5,000-year-old demigod and a robot would be really fun. And it wouldn't even really be jokes. It would just be the interactions between a 5,000-year-old demigod and a robot. As for the second rewrite, set this movie in the 80s. I feel like they already wanted to set this movie in the 80s. It would make for a better set design, better licensed music, and all the tech would feel that much more retro. You got a lot of retro tech in this movie. The televisions, the arcade machines, and even the van that the uncle is driving around. I think at one point they wanted to set this movie in the 80s, and it just never really panned out. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it was because the way The Rock came in and his production team made rewrites and changed the movie. Maybe it's just how the natural progression of the rewrites went. I can't say, I don't know. But it would have been a lot better. Now, if you set this movie in the 80s, it also makes Red Tornado all that more special. Make him look super retro. And when I say make him look super retro, I mean make him look like a robot from the 80s. I think that would be a really fun way to introduce this character, especially considering the other rewrite that I'll have in mind. I'll tell you in a moment. I want it to be special. Obviously, if you take out Atom Smasher and Cyclone, you'd have to lose a few scenes and add some tornado moments. But I want to cut this movie down by about 15 to 20 minutes anyway, so it's fine. It's not a big deal. So, to get into the meat and potatoes of making this movie better, we need to make Black Adam a little less heroic. You can basically keep most of this movie's narrative, keep the crown, keep the Sabak narrative, keep the beef with the Justice Society especially, keep all the fights the same, just swap Cyclone and Red Tornado. But when they all go to save that young boy, Amon, when he's been kidnapped, have it all go down the same way, with Black Adam raging out and electrifying Amon and everyone else around, and everybody gets hurt. The difference is, the Rage Blast is like an EMP and takes Red Tornado offline. He's basically dead. Nobody knows if he's got a backup or if he'll come back online, so now Hawkman is even more pissed than he was after he got his ass kicked. He thinks, and we think, the audience, that Teth Adam just killed a member of the Justice Society. Play the following scene the same way it does, where he goes to the palace and he's all solemn and grief for his son. The dude's a father who lost his son. It makes sense for Dr. Fate to show up and have a heart-to-heart talk with Teth into giving up his powers. So yeah, I want to keep that the same. He says Shazam, he goes to the underground bunker, and he gets locked up for a little while. Unfortunately, Kent Nelson still sees Carter dying. Why is this happening? They killed the bad guy, they got the crown? Nope. Sabak has returned, so keep all that stuff basically the same, even the way they find out. I feel like it can all play out the same way, except it's only Dr. Fate and Hawkman versus Sabak now. They obviously can't win. They couldn't win when it was the four of them, so they definitely can't win when it's the two of them. So Doc Fate still calls on Teth Adam to become the hero he was meant to be. Doc Fate tries to trade his own life for Hawkman's, but yo, Black Adam shows up. Kent doesn't die. They take down Sabak. That's my third rewrite, by the way. Kent doesn't die. Pierce Brosnan was an incredible casting for Dr. Fate / Kent Nelson. Why would you kill him off? I'm still mad about it. They take down Sabak. All is good in Kondak. Except, Teth Adam killed Red Tornado. Carter can't just let that go. Hawkman and Black Adam fight once again until Black Adam stabs him through the abdomen with that beam, the way that Kent sees him die in his visions. Kent is taken aback. He thought Teth Adam and him now had a kinship. He thought that they understood each other. Kent retreats with the body of his friend. Black Adam takes his throne, and the movie ends. That's how the movie should end. Black Adam takes the throne. He doesn't smash it, because he's not a hero. He's not a good guy, and he shouldn't be portrayed as such. Let him be a little evil. You can have bad guys be the protagonist of a story without letting them be heroes. So, the end credit scene has Shazam instead of Superman, and it's 40 years in the future. It's like 2020, 2019, whatever. 35 years in the future, 30 years in the future. I don't care. You set it relatively close to when the movie came out, and you got Shazam there. Why do we do this? The reason we set it in the 80s is so that Teth can kill Hawkman, and he'll reincarnate, and they eventually meet again. You know, you can have a fun little moment out of it. I don't care. Say like, hey, didn't we meet before? Something like that. I don't care. Also, Red Tornado is back online again, but he looked like an 80s robot. He looked like a robot from an 80s movie. But now it's 2019, 20. When did this movie come out? I really should have looked that up. Anyways, now he looks like a robot that we would imagine today. So we got an upgrade. I think it's a really cool concept. Also, Hawkman usually, this obviously isn't the version of Hawkman that reincarnates, but usually he's able to reincarnate. So I know it's not that version of Hawkman. I don't care. Let's keep it that way. Let's let him reincarnate. We're changing stuff all the time in these movies. There's no reason we can't have him reincarnate. Also, the most important part of this is it sets Black Adam up as kind of a villain. He killed 2 members of the Justice League. Whether knowingly or unknowingly, he did it because he has his own set of rules that he plays by. And if you want to call him an anti-hero, you can call him an anti-hero. At least when I put it this way, now he actually is an anti-hero. And I love that. So that's my rewrite of Black Adam. This is what I believe would have been a much better version, would have painted Black Adam as a much more villainous character or anti-hero character. I honestly don't care which way he leans in that sense. But then you can bring him back and have him meet up with the rest of the Justice Society / Justice League for whatever was coming. I don't know, because obviously I wasn't in the room. I don't know if Zaslav was in charge at that time. I don't know if Snyder was in charge at that time, but you could have reintroduced him with that time jump. I think it would have been a much better movie if we just had him do something that was actually outside of the norm, that went against the grain, the way that Black Adam is supposed to be. You know, he's not supposed to be a hero, and this movie never made him out to be a bad guy. So, also, quick teensy little rant, real quick. How can The Rock say he loves this character when he actively campaigned against having Shazam show up at the end of the movie in the end credit scene? When he actively campaigned to have Henry Cavill, actively campaigned to have him show up instead of Shazam. It just doesn't make sense. He obviously does not love this character the way that he claims to. He obviously does not have respect for the character the way that he claims to. And I just think it was crazy. That's in and of itself. I mean, obviously, the production team should have done what they should have done and shouldn't have let The Rock's production team interfere. It's neither here nor there now that that universe is gone. It's donezo. It doesn't exist. Anyways, that is my rewrite of Black Adam. It's unfortunate that this universe has ended, but I'm super excited for Superman. I'm super excited for James Gunn's Superman and the restarting of this universe. I hope that it actually goes somewhere this time. When you look at the animated universe that DC has created, or not even the animated universe, when you just look at the animation that DC has created, you got Justice League, you got Justice League Unlimited, you got Superman, you've got Batman the Animated Series, you've got all of these different animated universes, as well as the connected one that ends with Infinite Crisis. How have they not been able to create a live action universe? How have they not been able to just put something together that people want to put their butts in seats for? I don't know. Hopefully it gets better. Hopefully we get more content, because I love superhero movies. I love superhero shows. I love superhero comic books. I love superheroes. So hopefully we get more of this, and maybe James Gunn will hear this. Maybe he'll take into account some of the things I'm saying. I doubt it. Oh well. Bye.